So how to get credit card increases on the card. So the first thing that you need to do, and we covered this a little bit in the lesson, but the first thing is you need to actually get a card, okay? So if you don't have a credit card and you have not had it for at least 6 months, just close this video. It doesn't really matter, all right? Once you've gotten a credit card and you've been, charging on it and paying it off and charging on it and paying it off, and you've been doing that consistently every couple of weeks. Again, we recommend paying it off every single Friday. Once you've done that for about 6 months, you can then actually call up that credit card company and ask for an increase. Now, just a little bit of details on this. If you go and you ask for an increase on a credit card, okay, and you haven't used the credit card, they're not going to give you an increase, right? So let's say I have a $5,000 credit limit, and I call the credit card company and I say, hey, I want to go and buy whatever. I want to go on vacation. And instead of $5,000, this vacation is going to cost me $7,000. So can I get an increase to $7,000 on this credit card? Now you're doing that because you want to increase the credit limit because it's going to help with your utilization. It's going to help you in the future for future loans as you do investing and so forth. However, if they go to and they go, well, that's fine, but you've never used even the $5,000 we gave you, they're not going to feel very confident of giving you the $7,000. However, if they go in there and they see, oh yeah, you've used the $5,000, and in fact, you've used it up to like say $4,800, and then you paid it off, and let's say you've done that a couple of times, they're going to feel pretty confident that they can bump you up a couple of grand, and then that's going to, and that you'll pay it off, basically, okay? And so the idea here is once you get a credit card, and it might be hard for some of you guys that, you're like, well, I'm going to spend $5,000, right? We're talking about even entry level, right? So let's say you have a credit card of $1,000. Like, let that balance get up a little bit to like $900 and then pay it off, right? Don't let it charge up. And then all of a sudden you get to a point and then you're just making minimum payments because you can't afford it, right? And I'll say this with extreme caution. Let's say, example, you have a $1,000 credit card and the only thing that you charge in a given month is, let's say, $500. Like, you just don't have a whole lot of bills to put on a credit card, right? But you have a $500. So maybe you put your cell phone, your electric, it doesn't really matter, right? And so if you need to max it out to 1,000 so that you can get that thing increased to 2,000, you might be thinking to yourself, well, how do I do that? Because I only have to charge $500. Should I just go charge a bunch of stuff? Well, no, obviously that doesn't necessarily make sense, okay? So what you can do is you can just not pay it for a month, okay? And I say not pay it, I say make the minimum payment. So you go out, you charge for a month, let's say you charge your $500, right? And then instead of paying it all off, which we always want to do, you just make the minimum payment. And maybe the minimum payment's $50 or something. So now your balance is $450, right? You are paying interest on that balance, right? And that's a negative. Like, we don't ever want to pay interest on any of our credit card debt. Like, that sucks. However, we're willing to pay a little bit of interest if that at least sets us up for saving a lot of interest in the future, right? And so what we might do is we might say, okay, I'm not going to pay it. Let's say it's January. I'm not going to pay January. I'm just going to make the minimum payment. And then I'm going to charge another $500 the next month, let's say in February. So now I have that charge of $1,000, the total balance of $1,000. And then once you've reached that point, then you pay it all off at the end of the month, right? And so you've paid 1 month of interest because of January, you didn't 100% pay it off. You just paid the minimum payment to allow that balance to creep up. Again, if you're charging $500 and you were supposed to pay it off and you don't pay it off and you're using that method, don't go spend the $500 you're supposed to use to pay off the car in January. Like, you need to have that money in a savings account so in February you can pay that off. We never, let me be very clear with you, we don't ever charge things and buy things that we can't afford. Doing so means you will be broke for the rest of your life. The credit card is not for you to go purchase things that you can't afford, okay? It is to build credit so that you can then go purchase things. Well, I guess purchase things you can't afford, but so that you can go use leverage to buy big things like a business or a house, big things. We don't go use our credit card to buy a Gucci shoes. We don't do that. If we have money to buy Gucci shoes, we might use the card and then we pay it off on Friday. Okay. So if you use that method and you charge $500, don't go just all of a sudden skip and take the $500 and go party with it. And then you end up at the end of the month or at the end of 2 months, and now you have $1,000 and you don't have any way to pay that out. And now you're in the cycle. Don't do that. We set aside every single time we use our card, we've set aside that amount of money in our account so that we can pay that off. on every single month. Now, this one's a little bit controversial, and the credit card companies are gonna hate it. Hate it. But technically, if you know the billing cycle of your credit card, and you can actually call your credit card company and figure this out, right? And so credit cards will lock in your balance at a certain time each month. So let's just say, just to make it easy, and all credit cards aren't from the 1st to the 30th. They can be from the 15th through the next month, right? 15th to 15th, or the 8th from the 8th, or whatever. But if you know the billing sort of cutoff, and you can kind of see this in your statement, it'll say billing period from this period to that period. Like that end period, that's the period. Let's say your billing period is the 30th. Technically, you could go and charge, right? Okay. Let's say your card was $10,000. You could go, I'm going to go to Best Buy and I'm going to purchase something for $10,000, right? Maybe you don't get to take delivery with it. It doesn't really matter. You go, I'm just going to buy it. I'm going to go pick it up. I'm going to pick it up next week. You charge it on the 28th. Your credit card books you on the 29th or the 30th. So they've locked the charge. They send you a bill for the $10,000, right? And then you call a Best Buy. Don't do this at Best Buy. They're going to hate me as well. You call the company and say, yeah, I want to cancel that order. Can you just refund it back to my card? They will then go refund you back the amount, okay? But what does your card say? What does your credit report say? Your credit report is going to say you have a credit limit of $10,000. The highest balance you ever had was, say, $9,000 or whatever the big large purchase was, right? And then you didn't technically, like, you bought it, but then you returned it. So the balance goes back to zero. But your card never shows that. Your card just shows, yep, everything's paid as agreed. Everything looks great, right? The balance was high at one point in time. Even though it was refunded, it'll still show that. So it's a little bit of a loophole. It's a cumbersome thing, but it's kind of like a little bit of a thing a trick you can do to ensure or to make sort of large purchases or to get larger amounts on the account without actually necessarily having to go spend it. Because if ultimately you want to go to $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000 credit limits, you may not necessarily have that much to spend, right? And so the whole like purchase and return thing can actually work, kind of gaming the system a little bit better. So again, building credit is about expanding the length of your history. Like, so always constantly paying on time, the payment history, having cards open for a long period of time. So if you open a card when you're 18, don't ever close it. Even if you don't use it, don't ever close it. And now also having the balances of that being really large, and just think about it rationally to yourself. If you were a credit card issuer, or if you were Chase Bank or something, and you were going to get someone who was applying to you, and you went into their account and you saw they've had $100,000 accounts and they've managed them well, or the next person has only $1,000 accounts, but they manage that well, who do you think is more likely to pay, given all other things are equal? Would you rather give money to the guy that's managed really large accounts and done really well with it, or the guy that's only managed, maybe the small little dinky accounts? Obviously the one that's large. So we want to establish ourselves and our limits and our balances with the highest amount possible for the longest period possible, and a nice long pay history. You do that, you'll be on your way to a 800 credit score.